They told you everything happens for a reason, that pain makes you grow, that loss teaches, that somewhere in the wreckage of your life, there's a lesson waiting to be learned, like the universe is your personal therapist. But here's the truth. Sometimes pain is just pain. Sometimes people die, promises break, dreams rot in silence, and nothing comes out of it. Nothing. No growth, no wisdom, no deeper meaning. A mother buries her child and is told, God has a plan. A man loses everything he built for 30 years and hears, maybe this was meant to be. How violently do we twist reality to protect ourselves from what it really is? Brutal, random, indifferent. You weren't born into a story. You were born into noise, into chaos, into a world that doesn't care if you're happy, healed, or whole. And the worst part? We keep pretending it all makes sense. We keep choking on this obsession with purpose because the alternative, that there isn't one, is terrifying. But maybe that terror is exactly where freedom begins. Maybe the idea that life must mean something is the very thing keeping you from actually living. In this video, we're not going to sugarcoat anything. We're going to rip the mask off the myth of meaning and expose the machinery underneath: religion, capitalism, trauma, ego. We'll ask the questions no one wants to face, and we'll face them without looking away. Because what if there is no grand design, no final explanation, no cosmic plan? And what if that's not a tragedy, but the start of something real? Your life didn't fall apart. It was never together to begin with. The idea that something broke assumes there was order, that there was once a time when things made sense, and now they don't. But that illusion of structure, of narrative, of meaning, is one of the most sophisticated lies ever sold. We inherit it before we can speak, told that life unfolds with direction, that we're characters in some invisible storyline, that one day everything will click if we just try hard enough, believe deep enough, or suffer long enough. But meaning was never embedded in the universe. It was injected into you. This is what Friedrich Nietzsche meant when he said, God is dead. He wasn't making a theological statement. He was announcing a collapse. The death of the grand architecture of meaning that Western civilization had clung to for centuries. When the cathedral crumbles, what's left? Not liberation, not joy, silence, emptiness, a kind of vertigo. That's the void. And it's not a personal flaw, it's a condition, a consequence of looking reality in the face without flinching. This is why modernity feels so heavy, not because we lost meaning, but because we still act like we're supposed to find it. We build entire systems to mask this truth. Religion gave us divine scripts. Capitalism replaced salvation with productivity. Social media turned identity into a performance. All different ways of avoiding the same unbearable fact. We don't know why we're here, and we probably never will. Colombian philosopher Nicolas Gómez Dávila wrote, "To want to give meaning to life is to create one more illusion to escape the previous ones." Let that sink in. This isn't pessimism. It's intellectual honesty. And it's brutal. Because once you stop pretending that life owes you meaning, a strange kind of silence creeps in. Not peace, not despair, just the absence of noise. And it's unfamiliar, terrifying, raw. You see it most clearly in the places where meaning should be overflowing. Like Norway, a country with some of the highest standards of living on earth. And yet, rates of depression and suicide remain shockingly high. When people have everything they were promised would make life meaningful and still feel nothing, the lie becomes impossible to ignore. This is the wound beneath all the self-help, all the hustle, all the spirituality. What if there's nothing to find? We weren't designed to live without answers. The mind aches for patterns, for logic, for cause and effect. But the world we inhabit is mostly accident and indifference. So we reach. We attach meaning to suffering because the alternative, that pain is meaningless, is too much to bear. We create cosmic justice to explain why the wicked prosper. We invent karma to convince ourselves the story is fair. But none of this is truth. It's coping. And maybe, just maybe, that's okay. But it only becomes okay once we admit it. If meaning truly mattered, they wouldn't be trying so hard to sell it to you. Walk into any bookstore, scroll through any feed, turn on any podcast. What do you see? Find your why. Live your truth. Awaken your purpose. It's not guidance, it's branding. It's not depth, it's demand creation. The meaning you're chasing, it's a product now, and you're the customer. In a world emptied of transcendence, capitalism stepped in to fill the vacuum. Not with answers, but with algorithms, with lifestyle packages, with slogans stitched onto yoga mats and corporate mission statements. This is not a mistake. This is not coincidence. It is a system designed to turn your existential crisis into consumption behavior. British theorist Mark Fisher captured it with one sentence. Capitalist realism is the widespread sense that not only is capitalism the only viable political and economic system, but also that it is now impossible even to imagine a coherent alternative. Now apply that to purpose. We don't just buy things, we buy meaning. And not only that, we perform it. A barista doesn't just make coffee, they bring joy to morning rituals. A junior analyst isn't just building spreadsheets, they're optimizing global solutions. We've turned jobs into identities and productivity into virtue. We don't ask what you love, we ask what you do. As if meaning were earned through exhaustion. Look closely. Even suffering is repackaged as purpose. If you're burnt out, it's framed as dedication. If you're miserable, it's just a stepping stone to greatness. You're told to embrace the grind, to trust the process, to fail forward. It's not resilience, it's monetized self-delusion. This is how you trap a generation. You convince them their emptiness is a signal, not to stop, not to question, but to spend. And the cruel genius of it all? They use the same vocabulary of philosophy, spirituality, even revolution, stripped of context and complexity, boiled down into sound bites and t-shirts. Purpose becomes a lifestyle brand. Authenticity becomes a marketing strategy. And freedom becomes the freedom to hustle yourself into the grave. What once were sacred questions, why am I here? What does it mean to live? Have become raw material for TED Talks, LinkedIn posts, and startup culture. We don't just fear the void. We've turned it into a business model. But here's the part they'll never admit. If you stop searching for meaning, they can't sell it to you. If you stop believing there's some higher reason behind your suffering, the whole system breaks. And that's why the lie must be sustained. Not because it's true, but because too many people are profiting from the illusion. What if happiness was never meant to be felt, just performed? Watch closely. The moment someone breaks down, loses control, says, "I'm tired," the world panics. Not because they're suffering, but because they broke character. We've built a culture where sadness is seen as a malfunction. If you're not glowing, thriving, posting, achieving, something must be wrong with you. Not the system, you. This is the silent violence of the modern world. It doesn't kill you with cruelty. It kills you with the expectation of constant joy. French philosopher Pascal Bruckner once wrote, "Unhappiness is no longer a misfortune. It has become a fault." Let that settle in your bones. You're not allowed to be tired without an explanation. You can't be lonely without a recovery plan. Even your pain must be productive. You must grow from your trauma. You must learn from heartbreak. You must heal beautifully. This is not healing, it's emotional capitalism. We've turned our inner world into a PR campaign. Every emotion is filtered through the lens of optimization. How do I fix this? How do I become better from this? How do I use this for content? But here's the quiet truth, the one nobody profits from. Sometimes sadness is not a call to action. It's a condition, a signal, a part of being awake. Neuroscience confirms this. The human brain evolved not to make you happy, but to keep you alive. That means scanning for threats, staying hypervigilant, feeling the full spectrum of fear, doubt, disconnection. If you're anxious, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means your brain is working. Yet we pathologize the very emotions that make us human. We medicate solitude. We suppress grief. We reframe burnout as not being passionate enough. We turn existential exhaustion into a branding problem. But what happens when someone has everything? Success, love, health, and still wants to disappear? That's when the lie collapses. Psychiatrist Andrew Solomon said it best in The Noonday Demon. The opposite of depression is not happiness, but vitality. And that's what's been stolen from us. Not joy, but the permission to simply exist without having to justify it with a smile. The goal was never happiness. The goal was survival. And now that we've survived, they've made us feel guilty for not being fulfilled. This is why you still feel empty after hitting your goals, why you still cry after the promotion, why you feel like a fraud at your own wedding, or inside a vacation photo that looks perfect on screen. Because real life doesn't care about aesthetics. It moves in cycles, in contradictions, in confusion. And when you try to flatten that into a positive mindset, you don't become happy, you become numb. And the system loves numbness, because numb people don't resist. They perform, they obey, they buy. A lion doesn't ask why it hunts. A storm doesn't apologize for where it lands. So why do you need a reason to exist? Strip everything away. Faith, ideology, goals, timelines, and you're left with you, staring into the raw material of existence. Most people run from that. Not because it's meaningless, but because it's free. And freedom terrifies the domesticated mind. You were trained to want instructions, to be told what to want, who to be, where to go. So when life hands you a blank canvas instead of a script, you panic. You call it a crisis. You call it lost. But what if that's the beginning? The Brazilian writer Clarice Lispector wrote, "I write as if to save somebody's life. Probably my own." She didn't write to express a meaning. She wrote instead of collapsing. She wrote because the void is a vacuum, and creation is the only honest answer. That's the key. When the world stops making sense, you don't need to understand it. You need to respond. Not through belief, through gesture, through presence, through doing. This isn't the freedom sold on self-help shelves. It's not follow your passion or be your best self. It's more dangerous than that. Because when you truly accept that there is no inherent meaning, nothing tying you down, you also accept that no one is coming to rescue you. There's no prize, no cosmic reward, no final scene where it all makes sense. And without those illusions, every choice becomes real. Every breath becomes yours. You can love without needing a reason. You can build something that no one will ever see. You can suffer without turning it into a lesson. You can create without legacy, without audience, without apology. This is the world beyond meaning. A world where you do because you can, not because it proves anything. And that's why it's unbearable for most people. Because meaning is a cage made of gold. It tells you how to act, how to grieve, how to hope. But once the cage dissolves, so do the excuses. You are free to act, which means you are responsible for what you become. In this terrifying clarity, meaning becomes irrelevant. What matters is the act, the movement, the creation. Even if it goes nowhere, even if it fails, even if no one understands, because maybe the most honest thing a human can do in a meaningless world is to make something anyway. The moment you stop asking why, you begin to breathe differently. No longer chasing, no longer bracing, no longer begging for answers that never come, and were never owed to you in the first place. What if the peace you've been clawing toward isn't hidden in some secret truth, but in the destruction of the question itself? You've been tricked, not by a villain, not by a system, but by a deep, inherited belief that there must be more reason, more order, more reward. But what if there isn't more? What if this, the blood, the breath, the banality, is all there is? And what if that's enough? Alan Watts said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive, not to explain it, not to decode it, just to be, without needing that to mean something." Because when you let go of the need for narrative, something rare happens. You start to see. Not through the lens of purpose, not through the story of who you're supposed to be, but through presence. A dog sleeping in the sun, a cup of water poured in silence, a hand on your shoulder when words won't help. None of it means anything, and that's precisely why it matters. This is where the pursuit ends, not in revelation, but in stillness, not in triumph, but in surrender. And this surrender is not defeat, it's liberation. Because once you stop trying to extract a lesson from every wound, once you stop demanding that the universe explain itself to you, you become unshakable, you become ungovernable, you become alive. Meaning is not something you were born to find. It's the rope thrown to those drowning in a storm no one controls. But you don't have to keep grabbing for it. You can let go, you can sink, and you can discover that there is ground beneath you, not because it was promised, but because you learned to stand without it. You don't need to understand this life. You only need to live it. If this video shook something loose in you, if it put words to a silence you've carried for years, if it made you feel seen in a world that demands performance over presence, then you already understand why this space exists. This channel isn't just about ideas. It's about creating a rare kind of honesty, the kind most people are too afraid to touch. And if you're still here, watching, feeling this with me, then you're not just a viewer, you're part of it. Becoming a member is one way to help this message reach further. It keeps the lights on, it builds space for conversations that don't fit into algorithms, and it brings you closer to exclusive content, behind-the-scenes thoughts, and a direct seat at the table. You can also tap Super Thanks to support the work directly. It's not just a donation, it's a signal that this matters, that truth matters, that you matter. But know this, even if you never spend a cent, your presence is already a form of support. Watching, sharing, reflecting, it's all part of the same fire. And I'm grateful, truly. So if you feel called to take a step further, do it. If not, just being here is more than enough. But whatever you choose, don't keep this to yourself. There are others wandering in the dark, asking the same questions. Send them a light, and I'll meet you there.